A ship is lying on her side in the middle of a city. She is in a river so narrow you could throw a stone across it. The water is 20 feet deep. The dock is close enough to touch. She never left it. Her ropes are still tied to the wharf. Thousands of people are standing on the riverbank, watching. Some of them are close enough to see faces in the water, and 844 people are dying in front of them. 22 entire families are wiped out that morning. Not a survivor left in any of them. Hundreds more people die here than died in the Great Chicago Fire, and the ship never moved. Here is the part nobody expects. The thing that killed them was not the river. It was the lifeboats. This is the Eastland. It is 6:15 in the morning, on the 24th of July, 1915. A light rain is falling on Chicago. On the south bank of the Chicago River, between Clark Street and LaSalle Street, a crowd is gathering. They work at the Hawthorne Works. It is a Western Electric factory out in Cicero, and it employs thousands of people. Today is the company picnic, the 5th annual. They are going across Lake Michigan to Michigan City, Indiana for a day of food and parades and games. 7,000 tickets have been sold. The workers arrive in their best clothes. White summer dresses, duck trousers, straw hats. They bring their children. Many of them are immigrants, Czech and Polish and German, and this is the one day of the year the company gives them. 5 steamers are waiting to carry them, and the first one at the dock is the finest of them all. They call her the Speed Queen of the Great Lakes. The Eastland is long and white and elegant. She is the fastest excursion boat on the lakes, and she has a secret that the people boarding her do not know. The Eastland has always been unstable. She was built too narrow and too tall. Her hull is shallow because the harbors she serves are shallow. Everything about her design puts weight up high and nothing down low. In 1904, she listed so badly, leaving South Haven with 3,000 people aboard, that the crew turned fire hoses on the passengers to drive them back and rebalance the ship. In 1906, she listed again. Complaints were filed. Over the years, her owners kept lowering her passenger limit, then raising it again. She is a ship that has been quietly warning people for 11 years. But she has done this picnic before. She carried the Western Electric workers last year, and nothing happened. She is beautiful, she is fast, and she is licensed by the United States government to carry 2,500 people. Now, listen carefully, because in 1915, something has changed on this ship. 3 years ago, the Titanic went down in the North Atlantic. 1,500 people died, and the world learned why. There were not enough lifeboats. The outrage was enormous. And in March of 1915, the United States Congress passed a law, the Seamen's Act. It required passenger ships to carry a full set of lifeboats, enough for everyone aboard. It was a good law. It was written by people trying to save lives. It was signed by the president. And on the Eastland, it was a death sentence. Because to comply, her owners bolted lifeboats and life rafts onto her top deck. Tons of them, high up, on the very deck that was already too heavy. The one part of the ship that could least afford another pound of weight is exactly where they put it. Some engineers warned about this. They said adding weight up top to ships like the Eastland would make them dangerous. They were ignored. And her owners had a choice. They could add the lifeboats and increase her licensed capacity, or they could keep her lighter and carry fewer people. They chose the lifeboats, and the bigger crowd. Remember that choice. It is now 6:30 in the morning. The passengers begin to board. They come up the gangway in a steady stream. Hundreds, then 1,000, then 2,000. Down in the engine room, the chief engineer is a man named Joseph Erickson. The Eastland has ballast tanks. They are tanks in the bottom of the ship that you fill with water to weigh her down and hold her steady. Standard practice was to empty them before coming in to load passengers. So on the morning of the 24th of July, as 2,500 people walk aboard a ship that is already dangerously top-heavy, her ballast tanks are largely empty. She has nothing holding her down. At 20 minutes to 7, the ship begins to lean toward the dock. Erickson starts letting water into the tanks to correct it. The list stops. Everything seems fine. The passengers keep coming, the band starts playing on the upper deck. At 10 minutes past 7, the ship leans the other way, out toward the river. Erickson works the tanks again. The Eastland straightens. Nobody on deck is alarmed. Some passengers have noticed the ship swaying gently under their feet. They mention it, and then they forget about it. The gangway is drawn in. The Eastland is full. At 20 past 7, she starts to lean toward the river again. And this time she does not stop. The captain is a man named Harry Pedersen. He is standing on the bridge. He has sailed this ship many times. He calls out orders. He tells the passengers everything is fine. The list grows. 10 degrees. 15. On the upper deck, a small band is playing ragtime. The musicians dig their heels into the sloping deck to keep from sliding, and they keep playing. The dance floor is so crowded that nobody can dance. Chairs begin to slide across the deck. Dishes crash in the galley. And still the crowd is not frightened. Because look where they are. They are in a river, in the middle of Chicago. They can see the bridge. They can see the buildings. They can see people waving on the dock. A ship does not sink in a river. At 25 minutes past 7, the stern line is cast off. The Eastland is now held to the dock by a single rope at her bow. She is leaning at 20 degrees, then 25. Water begins to come in through the scuppers and the low openings on the river side of the hull. On the riverbank, warehouse workers stop and stare. One of them shouts a warning. "Look out, she's tipping." And then the Eastland simply lies down in the water. She rolls onto her port side, slowly, almost gently, in 20 feet of water, 20 feet from the wharf. It takes less than a minute. Everything on that ship that was not bolted down now falls to one side. Pianos, furniture, every table and chair, and 2,500 human beings. The people on the upper decks are thrown into the river. Many of them can be pulled out, but most of the passengers were below. It is raining that morning, so the crowds went inside. They are packed into the enclosed lower decks when the ship rolls. The world turns 90 degrees. The floor becomes a wall. The windows become the floor. They are trapped under a steel hull in the dark, in water, with furniture falling on top of them. Some drown, some are crushed, some suffocate in the crush of bodies, and they are 20 feet from land. The river is full of people. Onlookers throw crates and boxes and chicken coops into the water for them to hold onto. Rescuers climb onto the hull, which is now a great steel island lying in the river. They can hear people underneath, alive, trapped, so they cut into her. A welder named Elmer Nelson cuts holes into the steel hull with a torch, and men pull survivors up through the openings. Somebody tries to stop him. He is told to get away from the ship. He keeps cutting. Through those holes, dozens of people are pulled out alive, but most of them cannot be reached in time. They spend the rest of the day pulling the dead out of the water and out of the ship. They lay them on the dock. Then the dock is full, so they use the sidewalks. Then they need somewhere bigger. So they open the 2nd Regiment Armory nearby, and they lay out the bodies in rows on the floor. Families walk the rows for 2 days, looking for their children. 844 people are dead. Most of them are women and children. Many are young workers who had never had a holiday before. 22 families are erased completely. Every single member. In the town of Cicero, whole streets lose someone. Every block, every building. It is the deadliest disaster in the history of Chicago. It is the greatest loss of life in the history of the Great Lakes. And it happened at a dock, in 20 feet of water, in front of thousands of witnesses, on a ship that never sailed. Now comes the reckoning. The captain is charged. The chief engineer is charged. The owners of the ship are charged. 6 men in total, facing charges of criminal negligence and manslaughter. And then the case is moved out of Chicago, at the request of the defense, to Grand Rapids, Michigan. The defense hires the most famous lawyer in America, Clarence Darrow. And the charge that finally goes before the court is not negligence. It is conspiracy to operate an unsafe ship. Conspiracy. Because to convict, the prosecution now has to prove that these men deliberately agreed to run a dangerous vessel. Nobody conspired to kill 844 people. Of course they did not. Every man walks free. Not one person is ever held criminally responsible for the deadliest day in the history of Chicago. A federal court later rules that the owners are not liable because the Eastland had passed her inspections. She had been certified as seaworthy. The paperwork was in order. The Eastland was raised from the river 3 weeks later. She was sold to the Navy, rebuilt as a gunboat, and renamed the Wilmette. She spent the rest of her life training sailors on the Great Lakes, and she was cut up for scrap after the Second World War. Almost nobody in Chicago talks about her now. There is a plaque near the river. Most people walk past it. The law that killed them was written to save them. It was passed because 1,500 people died in the Atlantic for want of a lifeboat. And 3 years later, in a river in Chicago, those lifeboats sat on the top deck of a ship that could not carry them, and they rolled her over, and they drowned 844 people 20 feet from shore. Congress wrote that law. The inspectors approved that ship. The owners chose the extra weight and the bigger crowd. Every one of them walked away. So who do you think should have answered for it?